Welcome back to the Crash the Pond podcast. Hockey is upon us. The NHL season is officially underway, and we're excited. The Ducks have announced their roster. Fall is here. Fall is falling.
Autumn is here. It's fall. How do we welcome people into our home now that it's no longer summer? There's no longer a backyard cookout where everyone can just take their sandals off when they enter the house, get a nice little Mai Tai or tiki drink. What are we going to give people now when they enter the house?
I'll welcome them like this, but it might also offend some people.
Oh, wow.
Little Padres hat. San Diego Padres.
Is that what the I will see or you will see?
Dodgers Padres, huge rivalry, probably pitting some listeners of our shows against each other. All the melodrama, all the theatrics. It's been fun. And so even though I am a Giants fan, I'm going to put on a Padres hat and support the Padres in their endeavor to take down evil. So there you go.
There you go. I'm with you on that. I am with you on that. Sorry for all Dodgers fans out there, but I am with Team Felix here and joining with our San Diego brethren for this playoff series.
So for the Dodgers fans that are listening, I don't know. Okay. I'm sure that you're not the problem, but some are. Okay. Let's talk about the season, though. So the Ducks announced their roster. We've got roster moves to talk about. We've got injuries to talk about. Why don't we just get right down to business and start with this? So when you and I last talked about this roster, the biggest thing that we were kind of prognosticating was whether the Ducks were going to go 13 forwards, 8D, or 14 forwards and 7D. And we got our answer, and the answer was actually quite surprising. So the Ducks went with the 13 forward option. They went with 8 defensemen. Jansen Harkins was put on waivers down in San Diego now. And here we are. Tristan Luneau has made the team.
Yep.
And what do you make of it?
I think it's a really interesting choice. It's not one that you or I thought was the most likely, I guess. Because also when we last did this podcast, Pavel Mintyukov was not on the ice. He hadn't played a preseason game at that point in time. So there were kind of questions whether the Ducks would have him. And so even if they went with 14 forwards, 7D, they could have had Tristan Luneau there. But with Pavel Mintyukov, it really opened up more questions of whether or not Luneau was going to be sent down or whether or not they would waive Jansen Harkins. And turns out they went that route. A little bit surprised by it because of Luneau having the ability to go down, but turned out to be a fine enough call. As expected, Jansen Harkins cleared waivers and was sent down. And so this really feels like Tristan Luneau had a great preseason and forced the Ducks' hand into making him into essentially earning his spot onto this roster. And then you look at any other guys. I mean, Pavel Mintyukov played good in the games that he played in. Olin Zellweger also played good in the games he played in. Jackson Lacombe, I think, had a really, really strong preseason. And everyone on the blue line really deserves to be there outside of, I mean, the only one that maybe wouldn't, or you would classify as wouldn't, would be Urho Vakanainen. But he also gives them cover with additional guys if guys get hurt, different things like that. So really, to me, the only thing they could have done different if they really wanted to keep Harkins up was to waive Vakanainen. But I don't really think there's a win or loss situation there with the guy that you're waiving. And so Urho Vakanainen maybe was less likely to clear. So that's probably why they did it that way.
So I think that Luneau making the team may have been predetermined. I think that the Ducks came into the training camp, into the preseason, with the presumption that Luneau should make the team. And unless he looked really bad or not ready, that he was going to be on the team. Because remember, listening to Pat Verbeek's comments over the offseason and at the end of last season, it sounded like they had Luneau in their plans to be on the team right away. And that's something that we talked about. And now looking back, it seems like that was the case. Because for me, when I watched Luneau in this preseason, I don't think how do I put this? I think that he played well. I think that he showed measurable improvement in a lot of different areas, but I also think he really, really struggled in some kind of fundamental things on the breakout. And I think that the Ducks' approach this year, particularly with him, is that they're really big fans of his game and that they're willing to live with some of the growing pains. I don't think this is a case of he played his way onto the team. I think this is a case of we think that we think he needs the reps, and we're going to let him kind of get those reps. And I don't think that that's a bad thing.
I think he did play his way onto the team. I think you're right that there are some things there, but I did think the improvements that he showed, I think probably impressed them enough to give him the spot. He didn't give them, I guess, a better way to put it, he didn't give them a reason to send him down. It is probably the best way to put it.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is that he just had to not play his way out of the spot.
Yeah.
I don't think that
I
don't think he started from the standpoint of we're not sure if he's going to be on the team to then playing so well that they have to put him on the team. I think it's more of we want him on the team. Mm-hmm. Let's see how he does. And
yeah, I'd agree.
He did well enough. And I think it's just fascinating because this is something that people are bringing up in our chat already, but now with the D pairings, you've got Fowler, Luneau, Lacombe, Gudis, Minchikov, Dumoulin, and for the time being, the extra, of course, Vakanainen, but then Olin Zellweger may have to sit out a few games. We don't know what that rotation is going to be like. But to me, it's just so fascinating that a defenseman in Zellweger who did all the things that the Ducks asked of him last year, put on the weight, put on the muscle, went down to San Diego, worked on his game, became an all-star in the AHL, then comes up, then plays well in the NHL. To come into the season as an extra defenseman, he's still in the NHL and things will be fine. But it's kind of crazy that the guy in Luneau who didn't even play really last year is getting a spot over him to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that, and you and I probably both agree on this, it's purely a handedness play, I think. In the sense of if Olin Zellweger was a right-hand shot defenseman, I think he would be in the lineup over Tristan Luneau. And I think he's basically just kind of, the issue is he's a left-handed D. In order to get in the lineup, he would have to play his offside, and they would rather have a right-hand D, a natural right-hand shot on that side over Olin Zellweger, at least to start. And I think that is the natural rotation that we're going to see is I think Tristan Luneau will probably play. I would bet Luneau plays the game against the Sharks, and then Zellweger probably plays the game against the Golden Knights, and they rotate in, and both of them will play with Cam Fowler in that situation. But I think overall, what this kind of flags for me is I go back to that 32 Thoughts episode where Elliot Friedman mentioned that the Ducks kind of went to Cam Fowler and kind of had mentioned that or more or less, it seems like the conversation was about the Ducks understand that these young guys need to be playing. And it really feels like that is Zellweger's spot where Cam Fowler is at. And it feels like that is really what is necessitating this trade in the fact, or this idea or this thought or this rumor or anything like that of the Ducks trying to move him. It is kind of this logjam that is now there. And I think if Tristan Luneau was in the AHL, this logjam wouldn't be there, but it seems like they really want him there, and that creates this kind of pileup that's happening.
Yeah, I think that the Ducks really want Tristan Luneau to get NHL experience. I think that they are rightfully big fans of his game. They drafted him in a spot where he kind of fell to because of the draft year that he had. Mm-hmm. And kind of a sidebar here, but what's fascinating, I was reading back some old scouting reports on Luneau from his draft year and even the Elite Prospects Guide, and his skating was not marked as a strength. And his agility was marked as a strength, but not his actual skating stride. And now when you watch him, he is a powerful skater. He has completely remedied that. Maybe it was a lingering effect from the knee. So I think that the Ducks are just huge believers in him. And when you listen to some of Greg Cronin's comments, I think that they're open to having these younger guys in the team and maybe just living with some of the lumps along the way. I do think, though, that at a certain point, kind of like what you were talking about with Fowler, this is going to become a little bit untenable. Like you can't, if Luneau looks as good as we think he can look, and knowing what we know about Zellweger, at some point you kind of have to make room. And with this Fowler trade rumor, it's not even really a rumor because the Ducks basically confirmed it.
Yeah.
You trade Fowler and boom, problem solved. Then now you have a top six of defensemen that's pretty interesting.
Yep, definitely, and completely agree. Do you want to jump into what we expect the lineup to be?
Well, all of the reporting on the daily lines it's been pretty consistent. So you've got your top line of Gauthier, Carlson, and Killorn, which they've been together all of training camp. And then I think one interesting kind of move that Greg Cronin has been trying to go with and went with in the last preseason game, and that's persisted in their skates since the preseason ended, is what I'll call a middle six of Fabry, McTavish, Zegras, and then Vetrano, Strome, Terry. So instead of the lines that we talked about last time, where you had Terry, McTavish, Zegras, Vetrano, Strome, Fabry, now you've taken Terry away from McTavish and Zegras, put them with Vetrano, Strome, and Fabry up with McTavish and Zegras. So what do you make of this approach of kind of a little bit of spreading the wealth, but you still have kind of I would say, higher skill second line?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in all of the machinations of the lineup that we kind of came up with over summer, this was not one that really
We didn't come up with this one.
We did not come up with this one. And I think when they were trying to do a spread it out type situation, right, and they put Zegras with Vetrano and Strome, or I think it was Vetrano and Leeson maybe, there were some weird things that were going on. And it just didn't feel like a good way to spread it out, because it almost felt like you and I both agreed on this, that loading it up was the better option there, because McTavish, Zegras, and Terry together felt like it would be so dominant that you could live with whatever that third line of Fabry, Vetrano, Strome would give you. But having seen this lineup play and having thought through this a bit more, if you are going to do the spread out option, I think I would still probably prefer the loaded up option. But if you're going to do it, this is the ideal way to do it. Because I think Troy Terry, when we've talked about Vetrano and Strome together, we've tried to cobble together who would be the best winger for them. And somehow we never got Terry there, but Terry's kind of the perfect winger for those guys because he is one of the best defensive forwards on the Ducks team. And so he is a guy that can help mitigate the defensive issues that both of those guys have in their own zone, can help strip pucks, can help get out in transition. He is a one-man zone entry on his own, and he does help generate shots for his teammates. And so he is a play driver there that line did not have before if they had Robbie Fabry there. And so that really elevates that line by adding a Troy Terry there. And then, while yes, it does negate McTavish and Zegras by taking away Terry, those two are creative enough and enough of play drivers that you can put a Robbie Fabry with those two, and they will still find a way to succeed. Maybe not to the heights that they would with Troy Terry, but they are still going to find a way. And Robbie Fabry, to his credit, as much as we make the jokes about the 18 Ducks, he is able to score goals. And so if he's able to find soft spots on the ice with those two, he is going to be able to find a way to put the puck in the back of the net. And so I think it's a very interesting way to spread out this middle six, and I think it could work out for them long term. I mean, in the game against the Sharks, I'm just looking at some of the numbers, granted, against the Sharks, but both teams had basically their full lineups going. Terry, Strome, Vetrano were the Ducks' best line. They basically allowed 0 expected goals against and generated almost 1.5 on their own, which just goes to show you how much of a disaster Vetrano and Strome with how much of a disaster Vetrano and Strome can be at times defensively. The fact that they were that good defensively with Terry, it could be a mix of just the Sharks, but it also could be a mix of those three working well together and Terry picking up the slack, I guess, defensively for Vetrano and Strome.
Would you say that there's a clear line between either of these lines where one is the second line and one is the third line?
I actually don't know.
You're hesitating.
Which I guess means no.
I'm going to say no. I think pretty clearly no.
Yeah.
Because I think that McTavish and Zegras, while good together, do have Robbie Fabry there. And McTavish, Zegras, as much
unknown.
Yeah, as much confidence as we have in those two, McTavish's defensive metrics were not good last year. And, Zegras did not have a great defensive season, even though it was an improvement. So, it's an unknown. And then we know the rap on Vetrano and Strome. They struggle defensively. But then you have Terry there. So I think one thing that we both highlighted in the offseason talking about this potential lineup is that whether you load it up or you spread it out, there's going to be pros and cons either way. There isn't a silver bullet. And I think that this is probably closest to optimal or closest to ideal if you're going to spread it out the way that Greg Cronin has done it. And on the Vetrano Strome Terry line, I think that line could actually work really well because like you said, I'm just going to echo what you said basically. Yeah. Terry is a puck hound. He is so involved defensively. He's just a great defensive winger. He's just involved in the play all around, whereas Vetrano and Strome can float. Vetrano maybe is engaged in the forecheck, but his controller kind of dies sometimes on the back check. But offensively is where I get really intrigued because Vetrano and Strome play a lot off the puck. Vetrano will get his quick shots, but he's not really creating plays. And Strome, it's more of quick plays, kind of play building, little short passes. Yeah. It really allows Terry to be Terry. So if you just let Terry run rampant out there carrying the puck and those guys can kind of capitalize on whatever comes of it, that could be their second line. That could actually be their better of the two. It could even be their best line. I mean, one thing that I kind of want to zoom out here with this top 9 of these forwards is I'm not sure there's even a clear-cut first line. I think that all 3 of these lines have question marks, but they also all 3 have tremendous upside.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good sign from what we were thinking about what the bottom 6, or I guess the third line would have been, to now there is a top 9 that while there are question marks on each line, there is upside on each line because that gives the Ducks 3 lines that they can roll out, and we'll get into the fourth line, but I think that the fourth line that they have is actually a quality enough fourth line where this sets up the team where I don't think, for better or worse, there's not a weak link from a line perspective. And so it's a spread it out. And so there's no real like massive strength. Like I think we talked about McTavish, Zegras, Terry. That could be one of the better lines in the league. There isn't one of those, I think, now with this grouping that they've set up, but there isn't necessarily a weak link either.
Yeah, and in a late game situation, you can still load up those lines. If you want to shorten your bench and go all in to get a goal or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think spreading it out this way, I would just really push back. So I know that Carlson and Gauthier looked really good together in preseason. I mean, I don't know how many times they connected on a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 for a scoring chance.
There were so many 2-on-1s for those two guys. It was insane how much they kept breaking it out and getting 2-on-1s.
Yeah, but I am still, I'm still not skeptical, but just I'm not expecting them to be that good right away, or even maybe they'll be that good right away, but then they may hit a wall being younger players. So I'm not really expecting that line to just be a first line right away or be a first line throughout the whole season. But
I think they're going to have nights where they look like that, but they're also going to have nights where they're not.
But now with this setup, like you just pointed out, you can kind of get away with it a little bit. You're hedging your bets because now you have 3 lines where anyone could kind of pop off on any given night. And none of those lines, again, in theory, are so bad defensively that they're going to cost you games. Like I'm still a little worried about Vetrano and Strome together. Yeah. But if you have Troy Terry there, that even if they're not as good defensively, maybe they'll help kind of even up the scales offensively with what Terry can bring. And, Carlson, Gauthier, we just don't really know defensively what they're necessarily going to look like. Same for the second line. But I think there's enough there to where you can kind of, pull on different levers and hedge your bets. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of what Greg Cronin has done here.
Yeah, I am too. And then fourth line is currently, I guess, set up to be either Brock or any of these 4 of McGinn, Lundestrom, Leeson, Johnston.
As long as Johnston doesn't play, I think that could be, I'll just say a good fourth line. And in my head, what's a good fourth line? Just a line that doesn't hurt you, basically. Get out there. Don't give up any, don't bleed offense against. You don't necessarily have to generate a bunch of chances, but just kind of hold serve when you're out there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if those guys can really generate a ton of offense. I think that Leeson has a little bit of that, but McGinn and Lundestrom, I'm less sure about. And then Johnson, obviously, not known for his offensive production. But
like I think if you have McGinn, Lundestrom, Leeson, what you can have there is maybe not a line that is going to generate a ton of offense and goals for you, but they can at least push play and not hurt you. And so they're a line that can be reliable. They can kill minutes if you need a line to kill minutes out there, and they can potentially play in the other team's zone while other lines get rest.
Yeah, what I like about
value.
What I like about that fourth line is that they're kind of versatile in that they can possess the puck in the offensive zone. As much as we make fun of Lundestrom, he can hang on to that thing. He can do that. Leeson is a big body. He can hang on to it along the wall. McGinn has that a little bit as well. But then on the rush, they all have a little bit of kind of transitional ability. They can all skate with the puck. They're all also, pretty active feet on the forecheck. So they can just kind of do a little bit of everything. And I don't know when the last time I can say that the Ducks had a fourth line that was like that. It's been a little while. Yep. So what's interesting is that, they waived Jansen Harkins, who is on a 2-year deal. But at the end of the day, like with all the guys, all the guys on waivers right now around the league, he seemed like a pretty good candidate to slip through.
Yep.
Sam Colangelo and Nikita Nestorenko, I thought looked really good at the end of camp. And Greg Cronin was really praising them in some of his interviews. Yep. And for a hot second, I thought that they might make the team, but they didn't. But I think what's cool now is that if the Ducks, let's say they go back to 7D, maybe you send down a Luno at some point or you trade a Fowler, you can call up one of these guys. And I think that they're reinforcements for that kind of fourth line role, or maybe even third line in a pinch. They have a few candidates. And I think that that's a nice takeaway from the preseason, is that you actually have a little bit of that next layer of players in your organization.
Yep.
So overall, I mean, I feel pretty much as good as you can feel about the forwards.
Yeah.
And, as far as the defensemen, kind of circling back a little bit, who would you say is the first pairing on the blue line? Wow. That was a long sigh.
I don't know, honestly.
Do you want? You want me to give you my guess?
Your guess is going to be Fowler Luno.
No, it's Lacombe Gudis.
That was going to be my first guess also.
I think Lacombe looks ready to take off. I think that, reading some of the interviews of players talking about him, everyone is saying how he looks, so much better, so much improved. And
we haven't talked about it, but Greg Cronin had his interview, and he really gave a lot of praise to Jackson Lacombe and things that he did in the offseason.
Yeah, and then a lot of players have echoed that. And so the fact that you have this guy who's kind of coming into his own physically, we know what he's like as a skater. And if the team believes he's rectified whatever defensive issues he had last year, him skating next to Radko Gudas, who is their best defenseman, that to me is your first pairing. And then from there, Fowler, Luno, that's just not a first pairing yet. Fowler was not a first pairing defenseman last year. He proved that. And then Luno he's just kind of an unknown right now in the NHL. So if I were to guess, I think, I could be totally wrong about this, but I think Fowler Luno is more of like the third pairing.
Well, I guess, let me ask you this. Are we going based on our opinion or based upon minutes?
I'm going off of minutes. I think Fowler may end up being at a more of a first to second pairing minutes total because of special teams, although he's not playing on the power play.
He's not playing on the power play.
But I think Lacombe Gudis and Mintyukov Dumoulin just make more sense as a top four.
I was going to say, you could make the argument for either of those to be the first pair here, because the first inclination was Lacombe Gudis, but there's a decent likelihood it could also be Mintyukov Dumoulin. Dumoulin was a first pairing defenseman in Pittsburgh for years and years and years.
Yeah.
That is not something that he hasn't done in the past. And so I think Lacombe Gudis is more likely because of Radko Gudas and the way that he played last year.
Yeah.
And what he brings.
I think it's the better call.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And then, the other thing too is that Mintyukov hasn't played a ton. He missed a lot of camp. He didn't play a lot of games. So I don't think that if he's going to be on the first pairing, if that's going to be the first pairing, I think we're going to have to wait a little bit to see that, which is fine.
Yep.
So, I think that Mintyukov Dumoulin can be good. I think Lacombe Gudis can be great. And Fowler Luno, I just have no idea because they did not really work that well together, I thought, in the 2 games they played.
Or Fowler Zellweger. I think we should also throw that in there, that it could be Fowler Zellweger also as a pairing.
I really, I am so intrigued by how Luno is going to look because I'm telling you, watch the video I put on YouTube. He looks a little confused on breakouts. He looks a little confused when he's retrieving the puck, and that's not at full speed. So we'll see.
Let me ask you this. If Fowler is indeed traded, what do you do with the pairings? Do you do Zellweger Luno, or do you put Mintyukov, or do you do Mintyukov Zellweger and put Dumoulin with Luno?
So is this assuming that Luno stays up?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, man, that is tough. I don't think you can put Zellweger and Luno together. But let's just say that Luno looks good and is an NHL caliber
Yeah.
defenseman. Then I'd be fine with Zellweger Luno because I actually think that those guys could work really well off each other because they're both super mobile. They both love to attack. Like I think that those two would work a lot better together than at least what we've seen from Fowler Luno. Like I really feel bad because I don't think preseason really matters. So I just part of me is like I see these games, I see Fowler maybe not looking great, but I want to at least see the real games before I go all in on like this doesn't work. So
Yeah.
I'm reserving judgment for now.
Yeah. I think probably my opinion is probably put Dumoulin with Luno, and you can do Minchikov Zellweger as a pair.
Yeah. Wouldn't hate that. It really just depends how Luno looks, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that is the X factor for this blue line.
Yep.
Should we talk about the net front?
We should.
Net front is not the right term. I don't know why I said that. Between the pipes.
Between the pipes. Yeah. So I can't remember if the last time we did a podcast, I think it was announced at that point. Yeah, because we talked about the goaltending.
We did the whole calendar thing.
Yeah. But the Ducks threw us a curveball, and instead of doing either of the things that we talked about with Calle Klang or Oscar Dansk, they ended up sending down Oscar Dansk, waiving him, and then Calle Klang seemed to be the final member, but James Reimer was put on waivers by the Buffalo Sabres yesterday, and the Ducks claimed him this morning, and Calle Klang was sent down. And so, to me, this could be a sign that John Gibson is going to be out towards the later part of that timeline, just because the fact of if you're claiming someone, you probably
the Ducks gave us a timeline, which just to mention here, 1 to 4 weeks.
1 to 4 weeks.
Yep.
So it most likely is on the later end of that, but then again, the Ducks could also just want Reimer for this weekend. They didn't feel like they were comfortable with Calle Klang playing on Sunday. They felt more comfortable with James Reimer, who is a good goalie. He had solid enough numbers last year. He's had a good career. He provides a much more viable option in net in Vegas than I think either Oscar Dansk or Calle Klang for the Ducks. And so even if it is on the 1 week side, this I think is a good pickup for the Ducks to get them through the short term. And then essentially the Ducks can put Reimer back on waivers. And if he clears, Buffalo has the ability to reclaim him and send him down to the minors.
You know the Toy Story meme of Andy dropping Woody? I don't want to play with you anymore.
Yeah.
That's what the Ducks did with Klang and Dansk. They're like, oh, there's James Reimer on waivers.
Yep.
Anyway, jokes aside, I actually really like the James Reimer addition for the Ducks because he is just a lot better, a lot more proven than either Klang or Dansk.
Yep.
You know, he had solid numbers last year for the Sabres, 25 games, and honestly, like I think that this season, let's just take Gibson out of the equation. If it was a Reimer Dostal tandem, I think that could just be an okay NHL goalie tandem.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't necessarily know how many games you can get that level of goaltending out of from Reimer, but like in the hypothetical where the Ducks somehow pulled off a John Gibson trade in the next 4 weeks, you are pretty much set in net. Like, I don't think you have to get a goalie back anymore in that trade.
I mean, there were years we talked about the Ducks signing James Reimer to be the backup to Gibson.
Yep.
And so now the Ducks have claimed him, granted years later. So much older James Reimer, but he provides them a viable option for the short term at least, and potentially a long-term option if a Gibson trade does materialize. But I don't think this is a sign of that at all. I think this is just wanting to, I think the Ducks really want to get off to a good start this season. And I think that they do not want to play Lucas Dostal in back-to-back games. And this gives them a much better option in Vegas and can give Dostal some rest also as the season is going along while Gibson is out.
Yeah, I don't think that they claimed Reimer because a Gibson trade is imminent.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that this team is in a position where they need to go grab whatever advantages they can get. And this was a really easy way for them to do that. And now, I mean, how do you feel just kind of up and down the lineup, behind the bench, looking at the schedule? What's the gut check going into the first couple weeks here?
I think I'm feeling really good. I think I think really this team could have used one more top 6 forward. I think
Yep.
is at the end of this what it feels like. If they had gotten a Steven Stamkos or Jonathan Marchessault, I think you would feel a lot better about this team's ability to potentially start getting closer to the playoffs and pushing for that. But I think what we have now, or what the Ducks have now, is they have a lineup with young players, and it's going to be really reliant upon those guys starting to take steps. And I think guys are being put into really good positions. I think Zegras and McTavish being together, I think, is a really good sign. I think it just feels like good decisions are being made. The only one that is a bit frustrating is Olin Zellweger not playing, but that's in some ways feels like a numbers game. And I don't.
It is.
The only other option is sending Tristan Luneau down, which might be the better option. So I think overall it feels like this team is heading into the season. I mean, knock on wood, everyone outside of John Gibson is healthy. Like, it feels like everything is pushing in the right direction as compared to last year. It felt like everything even started haywire with Alex Killorn being hurt before the season, in preseason. And it felt like that was almost a sign of things to come for the season. So overall, I'm feeling good. Are you asking me for point prediction or anything like that? Or are we just going with overall feeling?
Do you think that the way that the preseason goes matters at all?
No.
Like, do you like not just the outcome of the games, but like the camp and all of that?
No.
I don't either. I mean, as someone who follows the Canadians very closely, there's a lot of hand-wringing in the media about how they've looked bad in the preseason. And I'm just sitting here thinking it doesn't matter one bit.
I look back to, I think it was a year or two ago, or no, yeah, it was 2 seasons ago. Remember how the Ducks had a preseason game? I think it was the last one against the Kings. Mm-hmm. And it was like a fun, open game. The Ducks generated a ton of offense. It was 6-5. I think it was the final score or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the most miserable season in Ducks history.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and the Kings were a playoff team that year. Like in such a small sample size with guys that aren't going to be in the lineup, like there's just no ability. Like, and even then, like you're getting one game with the entire roster. You can have one game poor games throughout the season where you don't play well. Like that's going to happen. So you're basing everything off a one game sample basically.
And also watching that final game, I mean, that was not anywhere close to full effort. They were not going 100%, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be trying to go out there, balls to the wall and get hurt or whatever. Like, it just doesn't make sense for them to do that. So even though, maybe XYZ line looked good in that game, or
I think the Ducks overall in that game looked good, but
but it's like it could just be a nothing burger. It was basically a glorified inter squad scrimmage. And the Sharks missing Celebrini, like it's just. Anyway, all this to say, I don't think that all of that really matters. But, and now not to contradict myself, but I do think, though, that the difference with this year compared to last year, at least, is it feels like the Ducks are more pushing in a unified direction. Like, you don't have the Zegras-Drysdale stuff that's hanging over the team like it was last year. The lines have been kind of thought out over the last few weeks. This is year 2 of the same coach, and now he has a coaching staff that he got to select.
Yeah,
you have more goaltending depth. All the young players are a little older, a little more experienced. Mm-hmm. Even a Luneau, who I've kind of said has looked really shaky at times in the preseason. A lot of the stuff he's looked shaky at, I think it could just get better with just reps, with just playing. And so I do feel like, just in terms of vibes, in terms of feeling like the collective is pushing in the right direction, this has been a good preseason for the Ducks in that respect. Will it matter at all in the wins and losses? It might not, but it does at least feel like the organization is kind of a unified front this year.
Yeah, and I feel like in some ways having the Karlsson-Gauthier duo, it feels like that's kind of helped also, like just adding that depth piece to it. Like, you look at last season versus this season, like going into the season, Karlsson was a complete unknown. And there was the whole Leo plan and all of that. And just such an unknown. And then this year it's
Leo wasn't even guaranteed to be on the team to start the season. Yeah.
And this year it's like, okay, you're basically taking what there was last year and adding, from a guaranteed perspective, a Karlsson and Gauthier to it.
And Robbie Fabry.
Yeah, that too.
But everything just feels a little more stable, I guess is the best way I can put it.
Yes,
Stable,
I would agree.
less question marks, no contract drama, no game management. Just
Yep.
here are the guys. Now let's see. Let me ask you this before I do want to talk about Greg Cronin's interview.
Yeah, and I have one other thing to get to before that also.
I want to ask you this. What do you think in a couple weeks or whatever, in X amount of time, what do you think is the tweak that will be made? What do you think is the pivot point that Greg Cronin might go to with this lineup?
That's a great question.
The likeliest thing to change from right now.
The likeliest thing to change, I think, is Robbie Fabry and Brett Leeson swapping.
Wow. That is a rabbit out of the hat. Bravo.
Is that a good one or a bad one?
That's a good one. I did not think of that.
Okay.
That is a good rabbit out of the hat. I would be a huge fan of that.
Okay.
You know, for whatever reason, well, I know what the reason is. 18 goals last year for Fabry.
18 tucks.
But I do think Leeson would potentially be an even better option there.
Yeah.
Maybe less offensive touch, but he might help in different ways that Robbie Fabry can't help. So yeah, don't hate that. Don't hate that at all. And you were going to say something.
So one thing that also happened since the last time we recorded, Beckett Seneca got in a preseason game. What were your thoughts on him?
That's true.
What were your thoughts on his game? And he was also sent back to Oshawa.
He just looked rusty. I mean, he looked a little, I don't want to say out of sorts, but he looked like he hadn't played in a while. He had a few plays where he was able to, connect on some passes, but there was one play where he was coming down on the rush and he tries to stick handle around a defender, but he ends up stick handling into like 3 players on the opposing team. So I had really I'm not taking anything away from that game.
Yep.
Like that game is a nothing burger to me. But what was nice about it is he got a shootout attempt and a little razzle dazzle in the shootout. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, it looked really, really good. The move was great.
Yeah, looked really good. So he kind of got to go out on a high note, and now he goes down to Oshawa, to the OHL, and hopefully we'll have a great season. Maybe, progress and all of that. So, good for him that he got the NHL camp experience, got into a game, and we'll just have to see.
Yep.
Okay, Behind the Bench podcast interview.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to do a full rehash of that interview, but for those who haven't noticed or listened or don't know what we're talking about, so the Ducks have a podcast called Behind the Bench, which is on Spotify and Apple and all those places. Alexis Downey does it, and do they do like 1 episode a season or 2?
I feel like there's supposed to be multiple, but I don't know the last time they did it.
Well, so last season she did an interview with Greg Cronin, which was great. And Greg Cronin, he's a very kind of expressive guy. He really lets you in, and he did a great job. And I think now he's still that, but he has a whole year of Ducks hockey to talk about. And he had some really interesting notes. So for those who haven't listened, I would recommend that you do so. If you don't want any spoilers, I would say hit pause and go listen. But we are going to spoil a few things, so we're going to go into it. What were some of your takeaways from that interview?
I think that it was interesting to hear him talk about the assistant coaches, and specifically going into what made him think it was time to move on from the prior guys, and giving them full credit for who they were, everything about that. But then jumping into what made specifically Rich Clune a guy that he wanted to hire, and just his ability to connect with the younger players, and how also that it really verified the fact that all the guys that were let go, they weren't necessarily his guys. They were guys that he had to work with that were here before, that were Dallas Eakins hires, and then these are his guys. These are ones he helped interview, and Rich Clune is a guy that can work with him and can help bring new ideas to the power play and really help connect with the younger players. And then the other interesting part was Peter Budaj.
Well, I just want to add a footnote to what you said about Rich Clune. So he's in his 30s. And Greg Cronin really stressed that he feels like he can connect better to the younger players because of his younger age. So
yeah. And then with Peter Budaj, Peter Budaj was brought in as a goaltending consultant for the Ducks, and he said one of the things with Budaj that he really likes is that it's like goaltending coaches can really get so focused in on the position and only that. but he's like, one of the things that Budai does really well is he really focuses on working within the system and tweaks that can be made to the system to help the goalie, and how the goalie can help work within that system, whether guys should get down to block shots or let the shot go through, and just kind of an overall comprehensive approach from the coaching staff as compared to each guy having its insulated role, is what it seemed like.
So I can vouch for Peter Budaj.
Mm-hmm.
I can vouch for him because he was a backup for Carey Price for a while. And back then the Canadians had a like a behind the scenes series, which was actually very regular. And Budaj always struck me as just, this guy must be a great teammate. Like, he just seemed always super positive, like really kind of fun loving to be around. And I think that that's actually really hard to do as a goalie. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there about how goalies in the NHL are not, goalies on the same team, backup and starter, are not necessarily on the best of terms. Because at the end of the day, if one guy's playing, it's taking food off your plate, pardon the analogy. But like, and so to have that positive mindset and to be a great teammate and to be charismatic as a backup goalie, maybe it's easier when it's clearly like, hey, you're the backup to a Hall of Fame goalie. But I still think that that's not an easy thing to do. And I think if he can impart any of that kind of positivity and that mental, I don't want to say not toughness, but like just being mentally neutral, just go into a game, you know, or whatever happens, like just be neutral about it. Don't get upset if one goalie's playing over you. I think that that can be hugely beneficial, especially to a young goalie like Lucas Dostal. So I think he's a great add for the franchise.
Yep. And I guess I'll jump to you and kind of what was your first kind of takeaway from it, because there was a lot there.
My biggest takeaway was this. So Greg Cronin explicitly said that Pat Verbeek had to pull him back last year.
Yeah.
That he maybe was too hard on players. He didn't maybe say it in those exact words, but that's what he was getting at. That he tried to get to a standard and he did not do a good job of getting players to follow that standard, to uphold that standard at all times. And there was a report prior to that podcast from Ilya Lyubushkin saying that it was a tough environment with the Ducks last year and that Greg Cronin was really tough. And I think now that report looks pretty credible. If Pat Verbeek had to step in and kind of tell Greg Cronin, hey, maybe you're being a little too hard on these guys, you know, it's not because he was ill-intended or whatever, but it kind of shows that Ilya Lyubushkin wasn't just, you know, speaking out of his rear end.
Yeah.
Also, you know, I think that with Greg Cronin, what's interesting is that now he really talked about how this year we want to be more willing to let players work through mistakes, that we want to let guys, hey, if as soon as you make a mistake, it's not negative reinforcement. It's not consequences. It's okay. You made a mistake. How can we grow from it? And all of that tells me is that I think Greg Cronin came in last year with a very strict kind of code of conduct, standards. That's kind of what he was brought in to do, to clean up the house, clean up the mess that was left. But I think he kind of came into it a little too heavy-handed, you know, not necessarily acknowledging that it was going to be a bumpy ride. And that's what he even said in the interview, like, I can be a little stubborn or whatever the exact wording was. I think this year, if he can kind of keep that toughness, that grittiness as a coach of, hey, we have a standard, we have to uphold it, but also have a little bit of a developmental mindset that these guys just aren't going to get it right away. He even talked about how he grew up in an environment where in school, if you did something wrong, like you got disciplined, you got punished. And now kids these days don't have that. And it's like, I think he's just kind of really realized what he's got to do to get the most out of this group. So I think that level of introspection from a coach publicly is just unheard of in the NHL. It's unheard of. And so I will give full credit. I will give a bouquet of flowers to Greg Cronin for doing that. I think it takes a lot of guts to just say, these are the things I did wrong. And I'm very curious to see how he's going to remedy them. But he went up in my book by saying all those things, because I think he could have easily just given some fluff and, you know, that would have been it and no one would have said anything.
Yeah, I think it was really, really introspective from him on a lot of different fronts. And I think that he was very open throughout the entire interview. And so it's definitely something everyone should go and listen to. And he talked about various different players. He talked about Jackson Lacombe and kind of the training that he's been doing to try to get mentally tougher and
facing his fears.
Yeah, exactly. And how I think that he had said Jackson Lacombe kind of came to him and said he wasn't really going into the fight or something along those lines. And so, and facing the fears, like you said, to be able to do that and be more aggressive on the ice. And so there was just a lot there and really open and really candid. And so there's more. I think that we could spend the entire show talking about it, but everyone should just go and listen to it would be my best advice there, because it's the level of candidness that I don't think you get from every single NHL coach.
I would say you don't get it from any.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other coach that comes to mind for me is Marty St. Louis, but even then, like I haven't heard him be this candid as Cronin was. One thing that I didn't like as much.
Okay.
One thing that I'm a little concerned with is I feel like Cronin. So for one, he talked about analytics a lot. I don't know if you noticed that.
He did.
He referenced analytics a lot, and he talked about like the meetings that they had at the end of last season with the analytics team at the table, which I thought was fascinating because we've never really gotten an inside look at the Ducks process. But he talked a lot about how shots on net generate rebounds. Analytically, that's a superior opportunity to, whatever. And he really wants this team to embrace this shoot first mindset. And it's like, shoot. Be like the Hurricanes, basically.
Yeah.
And I think on one hand, for a team that has not been good, that was bad last year, embracing that mentality can, I would say, increase your floor. It can make you it's going to get you some more goals throughout the season. And so that's going to get you maybe some more points in the standings. But I don't know if that approach alone that can carry the day offensively. I think that to get to the next level, to be a championship team, you need much more nuance than that. I don't necessarily want Gauthier, Carlson, McTavish, Zegras to just be throwing pucks on net from bad angles. And so I think as the season goes on, I think that there's probably going to be a bit of balance with that, a bit of push and pull with that approach.
While I agree with exactly what you're saying, I think also when you're coming at it from the situation of the Ducks were 29th in the league in shots for per 60, there's a global improvement that can happen there. And I understand why a coach would want to push, because if you can go from being 29th to 10th, even if, yes, their shots from the outside, that's going to help increase the amount of goals that you're scoring. And so if this was a team that was top 10 already in shots and it's a throw more shots on net instead of looking for quality, then that's a different conversation. But you're talking about a team that just really was low in terms of shots on goal. And I think that is kind of probably more so where this is coming from, of you need to correct that and that mentality and that drive to be able to create those shots for yourself and take those shots before you can even get into the shot quality side of it.
But do you think that the Ducks were deficient in shot total because they just didn't shoot it enough, or because they didn't have the talent? Because to me, it trends a little bit if the Ducks just had more talent.
Yeah.
If they just had a better roster, they would have more shots, right? And so I think that what the approach is here for Cronin is, hey, an acknowledgement of the roster and saying that if everyone just shoots more collectively, it's like a little bit like Moneyball. Get on base more.
I think it's a column A, column. I think it's a both situation. I think the Ducks were passing up some shots in that situation that was caused them to be 29th. But it's also a situation of, and maybe an interesting thing is to look at where they would be at from a shots to expected goal ratio, and where they were at last year in terms of that, from an expected goals for to shots ratio. I mean, they were at 2 point, so they weren't great. So it's probably an overall thing, and I think it's both in that situation of both talent and them passing up shots.
Yeah, because they have talent on the roster, but the talent isn't necessarily proven yet. As much as, yes. You can say McTavish is great, Zegras is great, Carlson is great. These are still not.
They also had the injuries last season.
But I'm just saying that those guys aren't necessarily yet guys who are going to get to their spots and get their offense every single game, no matter what. They're not at that level yet. And so, again, I I'm not against this philosophy because especially for the bottom six, I think it's a great thing. Like, yeah, tell your fourth liners, shoot the puck. Why not? And so I think it's going to help the team in the short term of just kind of raising that floor.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's just more to offense than shoot more.
Yeah, I think you raise that floor.
And I'm sure Greg Cronin would probably agree with that, by the way. Like, I don't think he's like, oh, yeah, shooting the puck is just going to fix everything.
Yeah, I think what you have to do is you have to raise that floor, and then you make adjustments outside of that. Because I think what you're hoping is that shooting is contagious and it leads to more possessions in the offensive zone. It can lead to more dangerous chances. And then once you have a bit more of that going, you're able to then create more offense from other situations as a result.
Because the other thing, too, is like you got to be in a position to shoot. You got to get to spots where you can get shots off. It's not just a matter of like throw pucks from the boards. Like you have to actually have an offense that's working to generate those looks. So anyway, it was a great interview. Highly recommend anyone listen.
Yes.
A lot of commentary about different players. Went in a lot on Zegras, and he had a lot of praise for Zegras.
Yes.
I kind of love that the first thing he talked about with Zegras is the Michigan, though. It's like just reaffirming what everyone says about Zegras, but he had a lot of positive things to say about Zegras.
He talks about that he did basically what they wanted last year that he did get better in the defensive zone.
Yep.
And then, but also like was willing to put in the work in the offseason and really wanted to get better also this offseason.
Yeah, he had a lot of interesting comments, so people should go check it out.
Yep, definitely. All right. Want to get to questions or anything else?
No, not that I can think of right now.
All right. So we're going to start with our Patreon exclusive Discord. Go to patreon.com/crashpond where you can get access to our Discord. And we'll start with this question from Shaken Wings. Said, want to get this in, had it on the Patreon, but I think it was too far back. What do you think are the captain's responsibilities, written and unwritten? And if you had to select a captain, what criteria would you have for the player? Does age matter to you? Is there any personality you would stay away from?
Well, one thing Cronin talked a lot about is having kind of that middle, that middleman between the coach and the roster, having someone that you can kind of message stuff to your team. And I think that that's something that is always talked about as a role of the captain. You're also more front facing with interviews, media, public appearances. You're the one that goes to talk to the ref. So at least just for me, if I were to pick a captain for a team, first off, I want someone who's, this is kind of really obvious, but a team player, someone who's not like, who's playing for the team and not just for himself, but then also someone with just a high level of like emotional intelligence. I mean, those are really the criteria I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. Age doesn't really matter to me. I mean, there is something to it if you want a guy that's going to be there for a long time, because I think longevity can play a part for that and having it be like a franchise icon, but that's not a necessity to it. The only other responsibility of a captain is they get to go and talk to the refs when they're discussing penalties and that type of stuff. So, But agreed with everything you said. So Ducks M5 said over under on 4 20-goal scorers.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say under.
I'll take the over just to be different.
Like, who's it going to be? Who's getting, like,
I'll say Vetrano.
Maybe? Vetrano, Gauthier are your two possible locks.
McTavish.
Yeah. McTavish, maybe. Probably, maybe.
And then Terry. And then...
Yeah, actually, 4 is
probably one of Zegras or Carlson could get there also.
Yeah, I'll go under. I think those 4 are pretty safe, but then, like, Gauthier might also not.
Yeah, Gauthier might not, but Zegras and Carlson both might. Like,
yeah, fair.
I'll go over. Less is more. Drumbanger said over under on 80-plus point player. I'll go under for 1 80-plus point player.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to hit 80.
Yeah, I'm going under. And then he also said, will Zegras pop in multiple Michigans this year to make up for lost time last year?
Yes.
Sure.
He's good for like 2 a season. When he's healthy.
Yeah. Sean 11 said, thoughts or concerns on Lyubushkin's comments on Cronin? It sounds like Cronin is aware of the problem based on his recent behind the bench interview.
Yeah, so we just talked about that, but
do you have any concerns on it?
Well, my remaining concern is just, will Cronin practice what he preaches now? And for that answer, we don't really have a way of knowing. But
Yeah.
it at least, I mean, the first step to fixing something is acknowledging the problem, and he's done that. So I'm not that concerned, I guess.
Yep. Brad said, your thoughts on Lacomb's preseason? Does he take the next step?
Good and yes.
Okay. And he also asked, has Luno surpassed Zellweger?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Zellweger's ahead of Luno for me.
Yeah. Gooser said, do we think Pat Verbeek intentionally didn't sign a right shot defenseman knowing he was going to give this chance to Luno?
Probably.
No, because he traded for Dumoulin.
But Dumoulin's not a righty, though.
But he's playing the right side.
Well, the question was about a right-handed defenseman.
But I don't think he intentionally didn't sign a right-hand shot defenseman. He would have preferred to sign a right shot defenseman and then not have to trade for Dumoulin.
Well, I think so. Let me rephrase. I think Luno's presence and what they had planned for him probably played into how they acted this offseason.
I think that the way they acted was the same. I think that was the case regardless. Like, I think them trading for Dumoulin had that in mind anyways. And I think if they would have gone out and signed a right-hand shot defenseman as a free agent, they just wouldn't have traded for Dumoulin and they would be in the same position they're in now. Because Dumoulin's playing the right side.
Right.
So, and then Drake Duquesne said, will the Ducks power play be in the top 20?
Probably not.
I'll go yes, just because top 20 is a large amount of teams.
Were they
so
top 20 last year?
No. I'm just going with the hope play.
Okay.
I'm going with the hope play here. All right. So that's going to do it for for Patreon. So I think we had one question from Twitter, and then we'll hop on over to YouTube and Twitch. So start throwing questions in there. But actually, the question from Twitter actually was just asking us about the James Reimer pickup. So we've already gotten that. So for those of you on Twitch, please throw your questions in. But if you're listening on your favorite podcast services, you can find us at twitch.tv/crashpond, where if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime gaming sub each and every month, and it does help out more than you can imagine. Please hit that subscribe button, like our videos also, or like the channel, and you get notified when we go live. You can be just like Free Dental Advice, who subscribed with Prime. So thank you so much for that. Or if you want to watch us on YouTube, and yes, I know everyone listening to this has a YouTube account. Go to youtube.com/crashpond, where you can subscribe to our channel. You can like our videos. You get notified when we go live. You can be a part of the chat. You can leave comments. You can do all that, and it does help out more than you can imagine. Get us higher up in the algorithm, everything like that. Let's get a little like spike for people in the YouTube chat for us. But our good friend Lou has a question just for you, Felix. Will the Ducks end up being better than Calgary?
I feel like Lou's just saying this to troll us now. This has been like his thing. This has been like his thing. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think everyone is kind of like plotting the demise of the Flames, and I think they still have enough to be a solid team.
Yeah.
Not a great team, probably not even a playoff team, but I think they have enough in the tank to be just like solid.
Yeah.
And so I think that they might be in the same tier as the Ducks, but I think they're on the higher end of that tier right now.
Yeah, I think the Ducks could be better. Will they end up being better? Unknown. I think when I put together my prediction, I think I had the Ducks ahead of Calgary. But, I mean, I think the Flames have a higher floor than the Ducks do. I think
Flames
without a
top
doubt.
9 is just more solid to me.
Like Anthony Mantha is still a solid enough player. Like, Huberdeau is on their third line. Like, their lineup is just a better floor overall.
I don't hate their blue line either, so...
Yeah. But Ducks for Cup 2029 said, question, who does Felix like more, Demidov or Seneca?
Wow. Well, if you read my prospect ranking during the draft, you would know. Shame on you for not memorizing that. Just kidding. But
wow,
I like Demidov better. And that's not even a shot at Seneca. It's just like, watch the two play. And if you come away telling me that you think Seneca is the better player, good for you. And hey, it might even end up being true. Like Seneca has some things that Demidov doesn't have, but yeah, I like Demidov better. So,
yep. All right. We're going to jump, if people want to start throwing questions in or keep questions in, but we're going to jump to Actually, we have another question in our Patreon Discord, but I was going to jump to shit show after that. Less is more. Drum Banger said, realistically, who in the Pacific Division do the Ducks surpass this year? I mean, they're going to be ahead of the Sharks. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
Do they surpass anyone besides the Sharks?
I think there's a chance they end up in 6th. I think the likeliest outcome for them is 7th.
I really think six might be the ceiling.
6th might be the ceiling.
Like, you would need LA to totally crap out, which I don't really think. I don't think
Vegas
LA
to fall off. Sorry.
I don't think any of those teams could be so bad that they get down to that level. Like, you would need like catastrophic injuries to occur, which have kind of started for LA, but I still think without Doughty, they're still going to be solid. So, no, I think that the Ducks ceiling is 6th, and if I'm wrong about that, then you know what? Great. Fun. Yeah. We will have more to talk about. It'll be fun, but I've been burned before, and I'm not getting burned again.
Yep. Michael B said, question, thoughts on Emerson Edom's color commentary, and has he been better or worse than Dan Wood?
I'll start with the first part of the question. My thoughts are not very positive. Like, I think that I love his energy. I love the fact that he brings a lot of enthusiasm behind the mic, and I think that that's never a bad thing. I think that where I get a little annoyed, or just where I think he can improve, is there's a certain point where you're so enthusiastic that it starts feeling a little like manufactured. And I think he's got to let it kind of breathe a little bit more. But I think he's got all the tools to be great. I just think that right now it's like he's still trying to find his voice. And admittedly, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. And pretty spot on there. I think better or worse than Dan Wood. Personally, I think he's still better than Dan Wood.
Yeah.
I think he provides insights that Dan Wood did not. And so I think the change was a good change. I think he still is finding his sea legs with various different things. But I think he provides at least a more entertaining product and can provide at least...
He brings energy.
He brings a different viewpoint than Steve Carroll brings. I think with Dan Wood, it was primarily just repeating the same stuff between the two of them. Whereas Emerson Edom at least provides a different viewpoint than Steve Carroll in the games.
Dan Wood was just not entertaining at all.
Yeah.
It was like watching paint dry or listening to paint dry.
All right. So we have a few shit show questions. Let's see. Blind rank musical. Oh, we can't do blind rankings randomly. There has to be a thing set up. So we're skipping these ones.
I can work on that while you take other questions.
Okay. Olaf is Berserker said, who's your pick to win the World Series?
I'll go Padres.
I'll go Padres also. I'll go
Padres. Also, Padres have won, by the way.
Yeah, I saw.
And so me wearing the hat is the reason that they won.
Just take the credit. Lou, our good friend Lou said, what's your favorite and least favorite type of pepper?
Pepper?
Yeah, favorite, I'll go jalapeno.
Oh, okay. For whatever reason, I thought he was referring to like black pepper. I'm like, no, those different types.
Least favorite, I don't know, ghost pepper, I guess.
I've never even tried that.
I don't know. Like, I like ghost pepper, like, stuff. I don't know. I don't have like a least favorite pepper.
I feel like it's not really about the pepper. It's about the level of spice.
Yeah.
And one pepper I do really like is shishito peppers. Because those just kind of...
Shishitos are good.
They have a nice little subtle heat, but not too much. They just add a little texture to whatever you're putting them in. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I would agree. But also want to give a shout out to Dan Grimshaw, who subscribed to us on Prime. So thank you so much for that.
Ooh, shout out to you.
So are you going to hit me with a blind rank or no?
What was the thing that they wanted you to rank?
Musical instruments, and there was also wrestling entrance themes.
Okay, well, I don't have those up here, but I can pick. I can pick something fun.
We can end with one. Go for it.
Let's see. Do you want it to be sports related or not sports related? Let's start there.
Dealer's choice.
Why are you shifting the burden?
Dealer's choice.
Let's go vegetables.
Oh, wow.
Do you even eat vegetables?
I do.
Okay. I'm unsure if you do, but let's see how you rank these. Zucchini.
4.
Zucchini's good. Roasted
4.
zucchini.
4.
That's a
It
bad
just
choice.
is. It's just there. It's just nothing.
It's not nothing. It's actually great. So this is hurting your brand, which
I would maybe do it even at 5, but I'll give it 4.
Okay, cauliflower.
That's a 5.
Cauliflower is great.
No, cauliflower's a 5.
Oh my god.
Cauliflower's not good.
You may be vindicated though. Sweet potato.
1.
Okay. Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Okay. Corn.
I'll go 3.
Okay, and your number 2 is bell pepper.
That is a perfect ranking.
Corn would be my 5. Full disclosure.
Corn is a perfectly middle thing.
Corn to me is just very annoying to eat. It's also even more annoying to listen to people eat corn.
Sweet potato. Then,
sweet potato is the right call for 1.
Yeah.
I'll
sweet
give
potato,
you that.
then bell pepper, then corn, then zucchini, then cauliflower is a perfect ranking.
Okay, I'm gonna do one last one because this is just kind of funny.
Okay.
Blind rank dangerous animals.
Okay.
A badger. Is a badger I must be totally missing something here, but I guess a badger is dangerous.
Whoa. So what are we ranking here? Is it
just rank them? It doesn't
from most dangerous to least, or just what I like the most?
Just rank them. You can choose your own adventure.
A badger. I feel like I guess if we're doing it based on danger, that's
cool
like a 5.
it is. I don't know.
That's a 5.
Dang. No respect to the badger. Okay. Coyote.
Oh, man, that should have been 5. 4.
Coyotes suck.
4.
Coyotes eat pets. 4. Okay. Mosquito. Oh, you messed up. That's a 5.
That's a 5. So 3.
Mosquitoes kill the most people of anything.
Yeah, they suck. 3.
Okay. Moose.
1.
Moose are great.
I don't know what my list. I honestly don't know what my list ended up at.
Your number 2. Number 2 is crocodiles. Crocodiles are pretty cool.
This list makes no sense.
I don't know either, but that was the point. It was just a wild adventure.
Okay.
And we've come to the end. So
yes,
thank you everyone for listening. If you want to help support our podcast, there's some great ways to do that, which will get you even more content. Go check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. Link is in the show notes. For there, $2 a month gets you access to our patrons-only Discord server. This is a great way to connect with us. It's a great way to talk to us about hockey, prospects, other sports at any time of day, really. We're always on there. You also get to join the community that's on there. A lot of other diehard fans, a lot of people that you can connect with. It's a great way to support the show. Only $2.
Including Derek Lee and Patrick from the Hockey News.
Yeah, they are in there all the time too. So if you want to interact with them directly, ask them questions about what's going on with the team, you can do that. You can also bump up that pledge to $7.50 a month. So you get access to 2 bonus podcasts on top of the Discord server, and you get access to player videos, player breakdowns, prospect breakdowns. That's all at patreon.com/crashthepond. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. We greatly appreciate those. Those help the podcast quite a bit. Subscribe to us on Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Video content there, video podcasts. And also find us on social media. We're on Twitter. We are on Facebook. Little known fact. We might also even be on Instagram. We might also even be on TikTok. All these things may be true.
They're there. Sure. They haven't been posted on in a while. They're there.
They're there. But hey, it supports us all the same. However you can do so. And with that, thank you for listening, everyone. We greatly appreciate you listening. And we will talk to you next week. And by the time we talk to you next week, there will be real Ducks games to discuss.
2 of them.
Talk to you then.
Bye.